Welcome to another edition of Bleav in Giants. I'm Bob Papa. I don't have my two-time Super Bowl champion by my side, Carl Banks. Carl's a little busy with his G3 apparel business, a lot of meetings. But I'm out here in Tucson for the Cologuard Classic, and I ran into a good buddy, Joe LaCava, who's caddying this week for Fred Couples, obviously works for Tiger Woods. But more importantly, Giants fans, you see him with the hat on. You see him with the shirt on. He's always got Giant gear representing, and he joins us here on Bleav in Giants. Joe, thanks for a couple minutes. I know today wasn't Fred's best day out there, but you were repping the Giant hat as always.
Well, thanks for having me, Pop. And, we all love Carl Banks, and I'm sure a lot of people are disappointed to hear that he's not on tonight. But I will say this, as a fan, I'm 3-0 at the Super Bowl, so you got to give me a little credit there.
That's pretty good. I'm glad you skipped Super Bowl 35.
Yeah, we don't even want to talk about that one. But I still think if we had kicked off in that game and allowed our defense to make a statement, that might have been a closer game. People are going to say 34-7, that's crazy. And then, of course, the phantom Keith Hamilton holding calls, otherwise it's 7-7. So I'm still bitter about that 100 years later, but it's all good.
Yeah, and I think Brian Billick would not have let Trent Dilfer try another pass if that pick six had stood, because they were playing around him, that whole postseason. It was like run the ball, and it hit Shannon Sharp in the seam, and hopefully he goes 60 for a touchdown, and then that's the way we're winning.
No, 100%. I mean, hats off to their defense. I won't take away from that, but we had, maybe a notch below defense-wise, and like I said, I think we could add a field position kind of game. Like you said, if it's 7-7, or if at least we start with our good defensive stand, it might be different. But listen, we're 4-1 of the Super Bowls. I've got no issues.
All right, so how surprised were you? I know you were at training camp in the summer. You had a chance to meet some of the new staff. How surprised were you that they played as well as they did this year?
Yeah, Pop, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I thought they were going to be, 6-11 or whatever, 7-10 kind of, we had both Dallas and Philly, as you know, and you figure those are 4 tough games right out of the hopper. But, I did sense a ton of energy at the camp. I don't know those guys that well, but I actually met both Joe and Dabs at a playoff game, Ranger playoff game, after they signed with the Giants. They're at the game together. They seemed like best buddies that night. And I said, oh, wow, this is kind of surprising, because you hear about, coaches and GM, don't get along, or at least don't hang out together. They were like buddy that night. They're sports guys. And then fast forward to the camp that day, ton of energy. Joe was there on the sidelines, couldn't have been any nicer. Dabs was very enthusiastic with the guys. You just saw a different kind of sense at training camp,
Of all the guys you met at training camp that day, there was one guy that couldn't wait to meet you. Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator. When he knew you were in there, you see him, you've seen him on the sidelines. He's completely different from a personality standpoint, I think, than anybody expects when they first meet the guy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you know him better than I do, but I mean, I'm in there and I'm all jacked up, and I want to kind of go over what kind of defenses, he's going to call out there, and I'm all amped up to talk G-men football. And of course, all he wanted to talk about was golf. I didn't realize he was such a big golf guy. I don't want to get the stats straight. I think he said he played like 68 out of 70 days, leading up to camp. The guy's a golf nut. Couldn't have been any nicer. So we actually talked more golf than football. But like you said, I mean, he's this big, strong guy, but he couldn't have been any nicer sitting down. But obviously you see him on the sideline. He's very stern, but yet you could tell the guys love playing for him and love playing hard for him. And I think it's a great mix for the Giants. And I'm glad he didn't go anywhere, that's for sure.
So there was a report today. Now, we're taping this on Friday. First round of the Cologuard Classic is in the books. There's a report via ESPN that the Giants and Daniel Jones are starting to close the gap in whatever differences they have. I want to see them keep the guy, because I think with some better weapons, better interior offensive line, I think this guy can be better than a lot of people are projecting. But it's so important for them to get a deal done with him, because then they can use the tag on Barkley. If they have to waste the tag on Jones, it's really going to eliminate what they're going to do. Are you all in on the Daniel Jones situation?
I am. I go way back. If whoever's under center, I always tell people the same thing. Whoever's under center for the Giants, I'm all behind, because you know what? There's no need to badmouth anybody. And I hear it from my guys, because I know I'm a diehard Giants fan. You keeping Jones. What do you think? This, that, and the other thing. I think he's a very, very solid quarterback. Dabs has done great things with him. You hit it right on the head. Maybe a little more around him. I think, he's going to flourish and play very well down the road. And listen, the grass isn't greener. You need to sign this guy. And people say to me, well, 40+ million a year. I said, well, listen, it's a timing thing. And that's kind of what the market bears. And that's kind of what he deserves, whether you like it or not. And I'm 100% with you. I'd like to see him sign both. but I think Jones is probably the priority.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is, people are talking about there's no middle class anymore for quarterbacks. Let's say he gets a long-term deal with the Giants, a 3 or 5 year deal, and it averages like 40 million. So people are going to be aghast. If he continues to improve 3 years from now, when Mahomes gets his new deal, Herbert and Burrow sign, Hurts is going to sign, Jones is going to be in the middle of the pack because there's going to be a bunch of guys that are going to exceed 50 in the next year or so.
I totally agree with you. I was more thinking 8 years, 300 million, easy for me. I'm on the sidelines, but no, but seriously, like you said, that's less than 40 a year. You get him for 8 years. He's proven that he can be healthy now. And like I said, I think the guy's going to only get better from here on out with the coaching staff and what he's got around him. And I think we obviously got a good GM in place. He knows what he's got to do to help this guy out. That's what I would do. But like I said, it's easy for me on the couch.
As a fan, I mean, I'm in the booth. I got 2 of my kids with me working in the booth in Minnesota. I mean, it was an awesome game. They win a playoff game. We knew that going to Philly was going to be difficult, but how was it for you, like watching that? I mean, because you almost felt like we had gotten so used to under Coughlin in 05, 06, 07, 8, then almost made the playoffs in 10, the playoff run in 11. I almost forgot what like playoff excitement and nervousness felt like. It was kind of cool to experience it again.
No, great point. Like you said, we played Minnesota late in the season, even though we didn't win the game. It kind of reminded me, I'm not trying to compare it, but reminded me of playing New England late when we beat them in the Super Bowl. You knew you could hang with Minnesota. They're a tough team at home, and I get to crowd the whole 9 yards. They're kind of a fast football team, but I liked our chances going to that game. It's easy to say now. And you hit it right on the head. You knew Philly was going to be a challenge. Obviously, they're a better team. They're loaded. But the fact that we won a playoff game on the road, like you said, you get jacked up and you have something to look forward to next year.
So do you remember your first Giant game that you went to?
That's a great question. I don't. I can't remember what I did last week, so I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I was probably 10 years old, so it was probably mid-70s. But I don't know who they played. I remember John Hicks was on the team. That was the kind of guy that stood out to me. So probably early 70s, but I don't know who they
Holding number 74. That's what I remember him from. So where was it? Yale Bowl? Because you're a Connecticut guy.
Yeah, I think the Yale Bowl I just missed because I think I was probably only 8 or 9 years old at that time. So I probably, when they first opened the Meadowlands, which was probably 76-ish?
76, yeah.
Yeah, and I would have been 11, 12 years old. So I think that was my first game.
I remember mine was the old Yankee Stadium. They played the Cardinals. I remember the coolest part about it was when the game ended, they to get you out of the stadium, they let you walk on the warning track out that left field gate in the old Yankee Stadium,
right?
The original one. And I'll never forget the Giants played the Cardinals. I remember seeing Pete Athis like running toward me. Remember him with the eye black, number 45,
yeah.
crazy man.
Pete Athis, right?
Yeah, I mean, they had some decent teams in the early 70s, but they had a chance to make the playoffs in 70. And they should have beat the Dolphins in 72. They had them at Yankee Stadium. So what are some of your favorite, forget about the Super Bowls, those are easy, but like some of your favorite players growing up? Maybe we'll take it in 2 stages. Your young, preteen, early years, and then afterwards, obviously, I'm guessing I know the answer to the second part as we move into the later phase, but let's go back to your youth.
The first 2 guys that stood out for me, obviously, not obviously, but Tucker Fredrickson and Bob Tucker. Those were 2 of my favorite guys. I like Pete Gogolak. Then on defense, as the years got kind of later, like you said, Pete Athis and Spider Lockhart kind of stood out to me. And then when you get into those Super Bowl eras, I was always a big Jim Burke guy. My all-time favorite Giant is Mark Bavaro. So he was my guy. I know we're kind of skipping ahead. So I always loved all those guys in those teams. And then obviously, in their most recent Super Bowl run, obviously Eli was probably my favorite guy. And you got to mention Banks and Taylor and all those guys. You can go on and on. There were so many great players. And I got to know Otis Anderson a little bit. I thought he had a great Super Bowl in a few years for us, and he couldn't have been any nicer, that guy. So a lot of good memories and a lot of great players.
So for me as a kid, definitely Bob Tucker. He's in there. There was something about John Mendenhall.
Right.
Number 64. The way he would line up, he always lined up like sideways with the jersey hanging out. But for me, because I was such a huge Knick fan, and at that time the Knicks were still good, Walt Frazier was my favorite athlete. he and Bobby Mercer were my two favorites. But Brad Van Pelt wore number 10. So I was like in love with Brad Van Pelt. He was like my go-to guy in my youth. And then obviously all the guys that you mentioned in the 80s. I mean, how could you not like them? So favorite games that you've been to, again, non-Super Bowl, any ones that like really, you kind of think back and you remember being in the stadium, being at the game that were special to you?
I was at the, I went to the, I'm trying to think that I can't remember the exact dates and all that kind of stuff, but I think it was the last game of the season. I want to say the Giants were up like 24-20 at halftime against the Packers and came out and destroyed them in the second half. May have won 54-20 to get home field throughout.
That was 86.
It was a block punt in the second half. And I think Tom Flynn scooped it up and took it back for a touchdown. So that kind of sticks out in my mind. And I think I went to a 49er playoff game. It was the coolest I've ever been in my life. I don't know if it was the 49-3 game or whatever. My memory's bad, but those kind of 2 or 3 games. And I think the game, one of the first playoff games the Giants won after a long drought, I remember is that Hasselbeck maybe caught a touchdown in the end zone, big tight end. Mm-hmm. So certain things like that stick out to me. Like you said, the bigger games are easy to remember, but so many good memories of just those games. But like you said, so many good games along the way.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like not being there, but when they finally beat the Eagles in that playoff game, and then there's cool moments for me, like after Wellington Mara and Bob Tisch had passed, Tiki put the team on his shoulders. He ran for like 200 yards. They had the game in Oakland to wrap up the regular season. The interesting thing about that Packers game in '86, what people don't remember is Lawrence Taylor had a chance to set the single season sack record. And as they started blowing the Packers out in the second half, he came out of the game and I guess they were asking him on the sideline. They're like, LT, I think you need like a sack and a half and you could set the all-time record. And he's like, all I care about is winning the Super Bowl. So I'm coming out. Let's get ready for the playoff run. Right. So that's the kind of stuff that, that always stands out to you. Right. So now we got to go worst losses. We got to go. Now there's a lot of them, but do you have a worst loss? Forget about being in person. One that bothers you maybe more than anything.
Well, that's a great question. I try to, like I said, I'm thinking here, what's the worst loss that I've seen? That 49er loss, when Strahan's giving the old look at the scoreboard kind of thing.
Oh, the San Francisco 0-2.
Yeah. The Niners.
Because that team was awesome. That team, and they matched up so well against the Bucs had they played the Bucs the next week with their physical running game. That was, to me, that one hurt a lot. I mean, like you said, we had them down. I don't remember what the score was. I felt like we were blowing them out. Probably weren't blowing them out, but we were up pretty big. No, they were blowing them out. It's one of the biggest blown playoff losses ever.
Right. So that one definitely sticks in my mind because, like you said, we had a good team there. And then, the other, the bad memory is, I think probably the best team that we had, unfortunately, was when, everything blew up with the gun thing down there in Philadelphia and stuff like that. So that's a tough memory for me too, because I thought that team was Super Bowl bound.
Oh yeah, the 08 Giants. They were the best team of that era. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah.
If Plaxico was kryptonite, because I think a lot of Giants fans that are watching this forget the fact that in the late 90s, through Fossil's era and the first part of Coughlin's era, the Giants owned the Eagles. They beat them constantly.
Right.
And in 08, Plaxico was the difference maker. Their defense could not deal with him. And he gets, knocked out for the year with the gun thing. They have the number 1 overall seed. And I think the first play of they almost returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. And first play of the game, they ran a play that Plaxico would kill him. And I think Dawkins came over from a safety spot, blew up Hickson, dropped the ball, and it was like the momentum of the whole game changed.
Right. Yeah. One, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that really bothers me because because to go back to back is like, that's unique.
Right.
And they could have done that.
I think I'm with you. They had the team for sure.
Now, how many games a year do you get to?
I probably go to somewhere between 2 and 4. Back in the day when I was younger, I would go to, almost every game, but 2 to 4 just gives me enough now where I'm fine with it.
You got the crew from Connecticut. You got the post game little gathering.
Right.
You got the
Pre,
whole
post
thing going.
game, all day. You know the drill.
All
We're
right,
not going to get cheated.
so wrapping up here, you're here at the Cologuard Classic. Obviously, you work for Tiger Woods, many years with Fred Couples. Is it fun to be out there with Fred just on a little part-time basis with, Tiger taking some time off before the Masters?
It's great. 2 weeks ago, Tiger showed up at Genesis and actually played halfway decent. And, you miss it. But then when you get in the action, and obviously we're paired with JT and Rory the first couple of days, Tiger makes a run at the end of the first day, has a really good day on Saturday. So you miss it. The juices start flowing. So when Fred came calling and said, you want to work a couple weeks on the West Coast? I said, of course I do. He didn't have his best day today. Typical Freddie made 5 birdies, so he still could make some birdies. He can still hit it pretty good. Just a couple bad breaks and a couple missed putts. But otherwise, it was like old times out there. I see some of my old caddy buddies that are out here. So you're always having fun. And even if it's the senior tour, the juices are flowing. You want to win. You want to play as well as you can. You want your guy to finish as high as you can. So it's a lot of fun.
All right, so you got a month out west. Obviously, your son's doing a little caddying too. He's on Stricker's bag this week. How much fun is that to be, have your son around?
It's nice to spend some quality time together. He's probably tired of me already 2 or 3 days in, but we're having a good time. We're having dinners with Fred. We may try to have dinner one night with Strick. He's getting to know some of the guys. Today he was paired with Ernie, had a blast with Ernie. So it's just good quality time between me and my son. So it's a lot of fun.
So does he wear the Giant gear like you do? I mean,
he's a team player. He's actually wearing a Titleist hat today. And I even said to Fred, listen, you're a Bridgestone guy. They're a great company. He goes, no, wear the Giants hat. He goes, you care about the Giants more than you care about anything in this world. So have at it with the Giants hat.
All right. I know you got the Rangers stuff too, although, Kane's first night with Broadway blue shirts didn't go so well. But I like their chances here.
I'm ready for another run. Don't you think? I think besides the Bruins, when I say besides the Bruins are phenomenal, I think the East is pretty equal, just like last year. I mean, every series was 7 games for us. So I like our chances just as much as anybody.
So we're all liars because we all grew up and we heard the 1940 chant. And in 94, the Rangers finally win a cup. And we're like, if we just win this cup, if we get through the Devils and the Messier prediction, and then, Vancouver, and just win this last face-off and win the cup. I don't care if we never win a cup again. And now we're looking at like 30 years. I care if we win a cup again. Like, let's do this.
I had the same attitude back in the day, and it's hard to believe it's almost 30 years. Like, we're more than halfway to that 54-year mark. I mean, let's get it done already.
Yeah. Joe, we appreciate you taking a couple minutes. I know you got some plans here this evening. We'll see you along the way, but thanks for joining us.
Anytime, Pop. Always fun to talk Giants.
That's Joe LaCava, longtime PGA Tour caddy, Tiger Woods, Fred Couples, joining us on this edition of Bleav in Giants. Now, once the franchise tag comes out on the 7th and we get into the new league year, Carl and I will be back with a fresh edition next week, break down all the news, tell all your friends. As we like to say, tell a friend to tell a friend. Bleav in Giants.